Thank you so much for joining us here in the Globe and Mail Center live and also in our virtual audience. Hello everyone virtually. My name is Cheryl Sutherland and I am a producer for The Decibel, which is the Globe's daily news podcast. I am very excited to be here doing this live event. Before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge that the Globe and Mail's headquarters is located on the traditional territory land of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis Nation, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. I am grateful for the opportunity to live and work on this land. I'd like to welcome everyone in the room today, as well as our virtual audience, as I said, joining us from across Canada. And for those in our virtual audience, we aren't anticipating any technical issues, but we do appreciate your patience if any should arise. If you need any technical help, please click the help desk icon at the bottom of your screen. We're also going to set aside about 10 minutes to have some audience questions. So if you're in the virtual audience, you can submit any questions to the virtual Q&A box. I'd also like to thank the Canadian Women's Foundation for sponsoring today's event. And today, in the lead up to the International Women's Day, our discussion will be focused on the causes of gender-based inequity in the workplace. And today's panel will also examine how intersectionality affects the path to career growth, along with strategies and solutions to help close these gaps. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists. And as I introduce you, please come up and sit down. So I'm going to start with Anuradha Dugal. Hi, welcome.
Thank you so
Nishat
much.
Jessa.
Thank you.
Sering Yankee. Tracy Nestoli. And Jackie Parchment. Thank you all for being here today. It's a pleasure. So before we jump into questions, I think it's important that we kind of get a sense of who all you are. So let's start by hearing a bit about each of you and what you do. So I'd like to start with Tracy.
I'm Tracy Nestoli, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Rakuten Kobo. We're a digital book and reading company. And I'm also the co-sponsor of, or executive lead of our diversity and inclusion strategy at Kobo.
Great. Jackie, I'll go to you next.
Jackie Parchment. I'm currently board director, so I sit on a number of nonprofit boards and about to join the board of the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund. But before that, I was CEO of Mercer Canada, which is Canada's largest HR consulting firm, and retired. Today is just about my 1-year anniversary, so
congratulations.
So it's great, but thank you. Grateful to be able to do a lot of community work, and grateful to be on this panel.
Sorry.
Hi everyone. Thank you Globe Mail and Canada Women's Foundation for having us and gathering us all here. So thank you for the space. My name is Sering Yankee. I'm the Executive Vice President for Dream Unlimited Corp. We are a Canadian real estate asset management and development company with a global footprint across Europe, US. I'm also the board member of Civic Action. It's a regional-based organization. Board member also of Reimagining Doggling Tibetan Settlement in India, a refugee community settlement that I was born in, and a mother of 2 precocious teenagers.
I'm Nishat Jessa. I'm Senior Vice President of Finance within Oxford Properties. Oxford Properties is the wholly owned real estate investment arm of OMERS, and OMERS services over 600,000 pensioners across Ontario. I am a daughter of a 70-year-old mother. I am a wife of a supportive husband, and I am a mother to a sassy teenage daughter, and all of them really enrich my life. For me, my background is from, I was born in Canada, but my parents are from East Africa, and originally were from India, and so that's me.
Thank you. And Renato, I'm with you.
Thank you. So I'm Vice President of Community Initiatives at Canadian Women's Foundation. I've been there for over 15 years. I'm also a volunteer wherever I can and currently serve on the board of Royal LePage Shelter Foundation. My background is very varied. I started in teaching and then youth violence and then different forms of violence prevention work. And I currently oversee all of the programming at the foundation related to research, investing in community organizations, the advocacy we do, the government relations, as well as many other things that I'm sure I'm not remembering, because it's a big list. We do a lot at the foundation. And I hope you will go and find out all the things we do online. Please take the opportunity to do that. Maybe a few of the important things you should know about me personally. I am the mother of 3 amazing sons. Who I hope will be the feminists I think I've taught them to be. You probably can hear from my accent that I am originally from England, but my father was Indian. And one of the things that I love to explore and think about is how we speak really becomes a place of privilege for many of us. The accent we use, the languages we're able to speak, the ones we're not able to speak, it's really something about that I've experienced. I lived in many, many places growing up, but have happily been living in Montreal since 1997 with my wonderful husband. So he's the one who convinced me to come to Canada and to Montreal, and I haven't moved since. So very happy to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you for all being here. Montreal's a great city. So, so we all spoke a couple days ago, and we had a lot to discuss, like a lot of different topics. So we'll hopefully get to most of them. But I do want to start with Searing, because we started talking about intersectionality, and that plays a big role in this conversation. So can you start by explaining what that means and how it impacts equity within the workplace?
I think that just in our introduction, it really grounded and helped define and really impress upon us what intersectionality is and what we bring forth as professionals, as individuals too. And really going down to the basic definition is really the interconnected nature of whether it's social, economic, or political constructs that we really come forth with gender, race, lived experience, to Anuradha's point about accent too as being a place of privilege, orientation, I think neurodivergence in terms of our perspectives and everything. I think the interconnected nature of it is really grounds in terms of intersectionality. But along with that, if I may have the opportunity to also talk about the definition of common humanity and commonality, because with intersectionality, we have to embrace the definition of common humanity, because that two together allows us to grow and bring forth who as a human community that we are, embracing our differences, but also recognizing our common humanity, because that allows us to celebrate who we are.
Those are important points, because you say, like, we have to, celebrate our humanity, but there are differences. And yes. I wonder, how do you see workplaces and leaders be more mindful of these differences?
I think it comes with us. When I think about workplaces as leaders, first we bring about ourselves. Ourselves, I think, in terms of all of us here that we're gathered at, as well as virtually, is we bring forth that intersectional nature of who we are, but recognizing our privileges, but also our biases as we make the decisions, how we behave, how we show up. I think that's our first check as leaders that we bring forth. The second is in terms of the organization and the systems, and who's making those decisions on the program and services. At DREAM, we are quite fortunate that we have a diversity of leaders. Our board is 51% women. Our senior management is around 40, almost close to 46% women, as well as the rising leaders. But what are the programs and servicing into this community that is so diverse, and what do they need? And having that feedback loop, I think that's so important. The third I would really say is space. Space for people with different views and opportunities to come forth and be able to provide that. Once we recognize that, I think that's where innovation, creativity, and productivity really flourishes. So it's a combination about all those characteristics, how we embrace the intersection nature of it, but also recognize that how it leads to companies flourishing. The companies that flourish are the ones that embrace that diversity of thought and experiences that come with it.
Can I add one thing?
Please.
That was very well articulated and I think very thorough. There's one thing that I would add that organizations can do, and it's encouraging the curiosity.
Yes.
Because I think if we encourage the curiosity without so much judgment,
yes.
then I think you're going to get a lot more benefits that we were speaking about. Because there's a lot of benefits that can be had from the diversity, but if we're not really encouraging the space and encouraging that curiosity, asking questions, people feeling comfortable with those things, we're not going to get the benefits out of it. So I think that's the only
I
other
love
piece
it.
I would add.
When you say curiosity, what do you mean by that? Like curiosity?
Like, I think sometimes people are getting a little bit afraid to have some of those
Yes.
conversations. Do you
Okay.
feel that? Because I do. I feel
sure.
that a little bit because people are worried about being judged. And people are worried about like, oh, well, why don't you know that already? Like, we don't. Like, not everybody knows everything. And I think if we kind of check that at the door, we're actually going to get so much more out of all of these efforts versus there being like, oh, I have to be tiptoe. I you know, and like, it's just allow for that curiosity in the conversations, the discussions, whether it's at a macro level or at a micro level.
I agree.
I think that sometimes you have to break the ice too to make sure that, you know, people feel like it's okay to be curious, right, in these situations.
And that's not an easy thing to nurture.
Yeah.
That's actually challenging.
But that's, I think, where the leaders, when you bring your authentic self and you allow for those vulnerabilities, that gives access and opportunity for others.
It's kind of funny because when you think about it, the systems don't actually encourage the vulnerability. And we're kind of trying to change the conversation. I think the conversation is trying to change, but it's not embedded within the
I agree.
systems. Yeah. Vulnerability is not actually a trait that is prioritized or highlighted or emphasized enough, and that's probably closing a few doors.
It's interesting you should say that because I think vulnerability then speaks to bravery and how much courage you have to feel that. And I was interested in what you were talking about regarding curiosity. I think that's really important. And some of the best leaders I know have the courage to often ask really what I would say, like the question I was thinking, oh gosh, I don't know what that means. And I think, well, I'm not going to say anything. I should know what that means. And they instead are saying, what are you talking about actually? You know, and I think that's really important. But I think we also as leaders have a responsibility to make space, like not rely on someone to have the courage and the curiosity, but to make space and say, you know what, I haven't heard from you in this meeting yet. What are your thoughts? Really want to hear them.
You know, think is there a right way to ask something like that? Because like you said, it can be very challenging, or you might feel like I don't know what to say. But is there a right way? Do you guys have any tips on that?
I would love to know because that's something that you know, I was a former journalist, and so I'm always willing to throw in a question. But that's a very good question. Does anybody have a thought on Keys?
Yeah, I have a perspective on that. I mean, I think a lot of it is in just setting the culture and setting the stage, right?
Yeah.
So one of the boards that I sit on, we had kind of a non-traditional consultant come in and talk to us. And they said something that I find really impactful. They said, if you're in a meeting with 10 people, you would, all other things being considered, expect everyone to speak roughly 10% of the time. If you sit in that meeting and you find yourself speaking much more than that or much less than that, you at least have to ask yourself why. And so for me, like in meetings that I've chaired or been a part of, very often I will say that at the start of the meeting, and it sort of sets a tone that everybody's voice is important. It's a responsibility to speak up. It's also a responsibility not to dominate the conversation. And then the other thing is just basic protocols around speaking. So you kind of need to know the group that you're dealing with, not necessarily in every group, but there are many groups that I've been a part of where I'll say, okay, let's just set a protocol where if you're going to speak, just put your hand up first. And it's not that we're trying to be in kindergarten, but when you set that stage, what that means is you have to think for like a millisecond before you put your hand up. It allows everybody around the room a millisecond to think, do I want to have my hand up? You don't run into situations where people are talking across each other and the loudest or most aggressive voice is the one that pushes through. So honestly, I think the easiest way to deal with some of this is just systems, systematizing equity.
And that way you're also setting expectations right at the very beginning.
100%.
I want to stay with you, Jackie, because we talked about self-selection. Can you explain how self-selection fits into this conversation?
Yeah, so we're all some of our experiences, the environments that we grew up in, and I think unfortunately many of us that don't look like the stereotypical definition of what a CEO looks like or what a leader looks like can self-select out of putting themselves forward for certain roles. So I'll be very transparent. Early in my career, my pattern was I would never put my hand up. I would be asked to go for a role. I would pass on it once. I would see someone else take it. And then I go, oh, maybe I could have done that. And that happened a couple of times. I was kind of saved from myself because I had amazing sponsors that said, we see something in you and we need you to put yourself forward. But I think what's really important to know is if you feel that way, it's not a deficiency. It is a function of our environment. So for me, I'm Black, I'm an immigrant from Jamaica, I'm a woman. I have lots of really smart people that look like me in my life, in my circle. I never saw any of them in leadership roles. So I think what that led to was, in my mind, oh, you have to be perfect, or the bar is here to be in a certain role, because I know all these smart people that haven't been able to do that. And so you go, well, clearly I'm not going to be good enough because, I'm no smarter than she is, and she isn't there, right? So it takes a little bit of decoding and having sponsors who can sort of hold, show you what the standard is to understand that. But that's why I think it's so important to have systems in place so that if people self-select out, you have the curiosity to ask why. And as a leader who cares about talent, you can pull instead of just always relying on people to put themselves forward.
Yeah, I think that really echoes some of the things that I hear from people saying, not only that women are self-selecting out, but they watch it happen and they assume that it's because women don't have ambition or women aren't wanting to have those roles, that they step back because they're not interested in it. Whereas when some of the research we've read shows that actually 80% of women are as interested in promotion, and that's exactly the same number as men. So it's not actually that women aren't interested, it's exactly about the barriers that are in place. And there's many of them, right? There's barriers that we spoke about several times, the burden of unpaid care and all the things that we do either as family, as community, as friends, also as colleagues. They really disproportionately land on women. And in the pandemic, of course, we heard all about the women, 1 in 3 women who wanted to step back from work because those responsibilities just piled up on top of women. Since then, though, I'm happy to say it's bouncing back. It's not like women are saying they still want to not be in the workforce, but the invisibility of women as we go through hybrid work and as we get back into being in the office is something leaders need to watch out for, right? Just exactly as you say, so that you can see who needs to be introduced to this idea that they're ready for the next step. And there's also this cycle, especially for Indigenous, racialized, and newcomer women who've already got significant pay gaps, more significant pay gaps, and especially if they're in heterosexual couples, that there's a situation where their work is somehow considered less important because childcare is so expensive, and so it makes sense, in inverted commas, for them to not work or work less or work fewer hours so that you can manage the family finances in a particular way. And I think there's a lot that we know about the motherhood penalty. But on the flip side of that, there's what is called the fatherhood bonus, which is that men with children actually get paid more than men without children.
Interesting.
Which is, when you go down that road and you think it's coming at both sides then, right? You can't escape it no matter what road you choose to go down. I find that really important, and not to mention the workplace culture that is very, very difficult for many racialized and diverse women, which I think we also need to talk about some more.
I just want to go back to something, to Jackie, what you said there about what really stuck with me when you said that some women, you'll see someone in a role, you say, oh, I can't do that, and then all of a sudden you see that person in the role, like, I could have done that. And I think that's probably something that people can relate to. So I guess I'm just wondering, you mentioned one thing about how we have to be able to go out and get these people instead of them always coming forward, but are there other things that we can think about where these women are not, stepping back and not thinking about the self-selection, but also, I think also speaks to imposter syndrome. Like, how do we get over this? How do we encourage this to cease to exist, I guess? I guess as good as anybody.
That's a big question, and I think it speaks to a lot of things that people have already kind of touched on. One around there's ourselves and how we bring ourselves to work and what we carry with us. So, Jackie talked about being Jamaican. I'm Indian. I'm also Muslim. I bring all of that to work, but I bring with that the culture and the systems that I was raised in. So, for example, the environment that I was raised in is very collaborative. We work as a family. We do things together. We are hard work, and things will come. Things come to those that work very hard. Well, I'm not operating in a system in the corporate world that is the same. It is different. We need to recognize that they are different systems and bridging those systems in ways. One way, I'm personally on a transformation myself where, frankly, I'm trying to figure out and learn more about the system in which I'm trying to operate, because what has helped me thus far is not really going to help me at the next stage of where I'm going. And it's not that easy. I don't think there's many women that have come into my office and indicated, I don't know how to navigate some of these things. I don't know what is it that I'm not doing. And it's kind of a little bit invisible. It's not like the obvious things. And so for me, I think this, because there's a separation between those systems, whether I'm a visible minority or I'm a woman or I'm whatever it is that I'm bringing to the table, it's kind of making a little bit more transparent some of those things. And for me, it's been the sponsorship has been essential. Those are the people who are speaking on my behalf when I'm not in the room. It's the mentors and the variety of mentors. One mentor has not really been enough for me. I've needed more than one mentor, and it's really had a significant impact. And the final thing, which I think I'm using right now, which is helping me with kind of navigating when to speak and when not to speak, and some of those things that Jackie's alluding to, is a coach. A coach has been very helpful to kind of translate the two worlds, which I didn't grow up in, and it's not second nature. And that's my personal kind of journey, but those pieces are helping me with navigating some of those things.
I want to turn to another important topic about equity in the workplace, which is when women take maternity leave. There's this thought, and you talked about this, how there is this thing that happens where is there space for people to move up? For me, for example, I'm going to be going on maternity leave in July, so it's something that I think about, and it's something that you consider when you're becoming a new parent. You wonder if you're going to be setting yourself back. And something that, Tracy, you brought up actually when we spoke earlier on is you shared a story from work about a man actually who took leave, and you said that you kind of had to check yourself when it came to this. So can you tell us the story about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I work in Kobo is both a book company and a tech company. So it's got we have a lot of very strong sort of techie culture there. And a man was promoted to vice president to lead a really complex project that was going to renovate our whole tech stack and platform and so on and so on. And very shortly after getting this promotion, he announced that he was going to go on paternity leave, and he was going to take a paternity leave. I think he took a number of months. And at the time, I was thinking, what are you doing? You have a responsibility to do this job. You just got a promotion. Why aren't you kicking it? And then I stopped and thought, wait a minute. Until men, it's common and natural for men to look after their children. We are not going to have equality. It needs to be as normalized for a man to take time off and take responsibility for his family in that caring way as it is for a woman. And so whenever I can find places in our company where we can level that playing field and make that an expectation and make it easy and welcoming for men to take paternity leave, I think if we don't do that, we will not achieve equality. And that was a real key learning. Another thing is we have these big meetings, and lots of things are decided in the meetings, and somebody needs to take notes. And I thought,
it's like we know where this is going.
I thought maybe we women, and we were outnumbered, refused to take that role. And so our CTO was our meeting secretary. And lo and behold, we then installed AI that does our meeting minutes for us. But those kinds of things, we need to flip the script in lots of different ways, and counting on women to, get the training and the mentors and do the work is one thing, but putting it on the other side is also equally important, and that's something that I think we need to be mindful of and learn to expect.
And Rhoda, you mentioned some of the stats. Is there anything else to say about the research when it comes to maternity leave?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So there is research that says that if men take parental leave when their children are little, like when they're babies, they learn to take on child caring responsibilities early on, and this actually makes a difference through the whole of the lives of the children, that they see themselves as carers of children from that very, very early age. It also makes a difference how much of that invisible labor, the home labor, but that they do, because they see the impact of doing it or not doing it. And it's interesting that very often in gay couples, they don't have that same dynamic of like, you do this and I do that, and you do this and I do that, that often happens in heterosexual cis couples. And that's something that I think we need to name very, very often, because what it also means is throughout their work lives, and I've certainly experienced this in my relationship, very often it's not just what did you do during parental leave, but what happens when a child is sick, or what happens when they're on vacation and it's March break, or what happens when there's a school trip, or what happens, like I can think of all the times in my life where it's just been like, oh, well, you do that. Yeah, that's your job. Yeah, you do that. Yeah, you like doing that. Yeah, you have fun when you do that, don't you? There's a lot of that kind, which is all true. I do, I love it. But it shouldn't be the assumption. It's that assumption and changing the culture. And I'll just give you some other stats. Outside of Quebec, only 23% of men take parental leave. Because it's pretty hard and there's not great systems in place to support it. In Quebec, which is, as you know, where I live, where there's fantastic frameworks, 85%, almost 86% of men take parental leave. And I think it makes, we also have a lovely childcare system in Quebec, which I know is a bit of a gold standard. And it does make a difference as you get older. Also what those young people experience and expect of their relationships. So it's the modeling is also about the culture change, how actual government policy can change society, can change systems, can change how we're all going to behave towards each other going forward. So I think the proactive leadership to say, please take this leave, is also a really important part of making sure that then that's an expectation.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to turn to a topic that was kind of a big topic of discussion when we were chatting before, and it's the missing middle. Sering, I want to talk to you about this first. Can you explain what this means? What is this missing middle?
I think both Anuradha as well as I think Jackie spoke about, I think two concepts that I really want to speak about is like about the women who you have young women coming into the workspace, and then you have senior leadership. So, but in between there is this gap. And I think we have to recognize in terms of the talent as well as in terms of what are we building here. And I'm so glad and pleased that the research shows that it is bounding back, that women are coming back. And I think that that's where we have to recognize, and we have to be intentional in terms of, as leaders or as organization, that we are training, mentoring, championing, coaching, sponsoring, whatever that we need is the women. We want to make sure that right now we have a lot of senior women's. What's that succession? What's that continuity? What's that path of being able to have that space for these women? And I think that should be our focus, because I do worry and I am concerned. Like, take for example, like I'm in the real estate industry. Like 20 years ago, we were just laughing about it. 20 years ago, when I used to go to the real estate forum, it was a lot of gray suits, or well, I should say gray and blue suits. and there were very few women. Few women at the conference, of course. very, very, very few women speaking on panels, right? And it has changed. We hope the pace of change would be a little bit more, because we were just laughing. We were like, here in this panel, there are 2 women in real estate here. We're like, there isn't a shortage of women who can speak and articulate and be present, but I do think that we have to be intentional about how we are championing this population of women who have the talent, who have the capacity, but may be taking care of the parents. So what? How do we accommodate? Taking care of children. Like, what do we do to accommodate? How do we address pay gap? How do we address healthcare? Do we need childcare? And I think those are the structural and system changes that we have to be thoughtful and mindful of. But also, I think we have the luxury and privilege where women who are in senior leaderships who are making those changes, be thoughtful and saying, who are making those decisions in my organization? Is there enough representation that they will make those decisions that are intentional and what's right? And I think that's where it's not that the burden should fall on us, but I think it is the responsible for us to point it out when we see it and have the courage to point it out when we see it. And I think that's so important. Sometimes it's been tough for us to get to the point where we are at, and I don't think that we should think that it's been a challenge and we've come here. I do think that laterally we should be thinking about how we are creating the breadth of that women who can speak and who are making and affecting those changes.
Nisha, you talked about this a bit. What are you seeing? I'll let you catch your breath there. What are you seeing as it relates to women's careers stalling out at the junior level?
So I think we've done a wonder.
You need water.
I need water. Thank you.
There you go. Lovely.
I think we've done a wonderful job of increasing the diversity and representation at entry-level roles. But we're not seeing that progression as people get to the senior leadership roles, and that's definitely not what we're seeing. I recently heard last week about a stat about CEOs in Canada, and there are 6 CEOs in Canada across all of the TSX-listed companies, 6 CEOs. At the same time, there are 7 CEOs with the name Michael and 6 with the name Mark. And that to me is quite astonishing. I was like, is this 1978 or is this 2024? That just seems a bit odd. I'll tell you this, there's no one with the name Nishat. But we're talking about the systems and changing and evolving those systems and kind of making an impact there. And getting us, it's only going to happen as we start to look at the next level, the manager level, the senior manager level, and setting people up for director and senior leadership roles. But there's no shortage of representation. And so what we need to do a little bit better, I do feel, is bringing people along. And I think you spoke about it quite articulately, so I don't know if I have that much more to add. But frankly, there's a lot more that we can do to bring each other along. And I think we need to spend more time helping each other out to kind of move the needle. And this is something that we can work together on. Corporations as well. I think it's the awareness. They are getting more aware of some of these items, but systematizing the approach to how we kind of challenge what we're seeing is important, and championing at the tables, for those of us that are at the tables, and getting allies. We don't need to do this on our own. I think everybody recognizes the benefit of having that diversity at the senior leadership tables, like S&P 500 women CEO-led companies will outperform others by 3 times. This is proven, and proven time and time and again. So everybody sees the effect on the economy, on productivity. This is not just a nice to have, this is actually a must have. And so there's lots of people that you can get to ally with you as we go along this journey. And I think it's important that we see this as a societal change, to your point, Anuradha, than versus just us as individuals on our own. And there's so much more power in the collective, is my view.
I think you touched on part of the probably systemic reason for it by talking about systems in your earlier comment about having grown up in a family where everybody pitched in and did the work and worked hard, and hard work would be rewarded. And then when you were in a corporate world, that wasn't quite the way it worked. And I think we also face that puzzle of having a great deal of diversity as people come in, but less so as you move up. And I think part of it is right now we have a corporate culture where some of the people within it have a long history of understanding how things work and how power works and the kinds of conversations, and have a different kind of resilience than those of us who are at that board table or in that meeting for the first or second or third time. And resilience is a piece of it. I think BCG did a study on why they weren't seeing people moving up, and that was part of it. Is a high proportion were the first in their family to have a university degree, and so on, and that put a lot of pressure on them that would be invisible to the system as it is. So I think curiosity, patience with each other, compassion, these kinds of things are really important to build into corporate culture if we really do want to have change.
Okay. Maybe I'll add, I'll add a couple things. First, let's not forget that there's science to this, and there's data, right? So I can't tell you how many conversations we had at Mercer with clients who would want to make really bold promises, like in 3 years, half of our leaders will be women. Well, there's ways to track that. So if you don't understand, there's, for example, a tool called an internal labor mobility map that kind of maps diversity at every level. So, when you hire, what percentage of men do you hire versus women? Similarly for people of color and other metrics of diversity. When you promote, what happens? And as you track up, how do those demographics change? So in most organizations, you can see that at the bottom of the pyramid, lots of women, lots of people of color, but you really need to understand when you're coming off that kind of base level of the pyramid, who's getting promoted, right? How are you hiring? Who is leaving? So you can do all you want with hiring and promoting, but if you're not creating an environment where people feel like they can belong and thrive, they're going to leave. So there's a lot of science to understand what's happening with your workforce population, and without understanding that base level with the data, you really can't make an accurate diagnosis that will allow you to move forward. So I'll give maybe one example that goes back to maternity leave. When I was at Mercer, professional services, big organization, we noticed in our mapping that we were doing really well with promoting women, but kind of mid-career, there was a gap where it seemed to just really be slowing down. When we dug into that, lots of maternity leaves happening at that age and stage. What was happening was we had male supervisors who were very well intended, who were saying to themselves things like, Saring is amazing. When she comes back, we want her to stay. So let's not put her on that crazy client that's super demanding, that's going to expect that she works, until 10 o'clock at night. Well, guess what happens if you don't go on the premier clients and the demanding clients? Your career stalls out. So the most simple thing in the world is to say, what would you like? What works for you? But instead, there were kind of assumptions that were going into some of the decisions that were being made. So for us, opening up and allowing leaders to have those conversations that are a little bit difficult, where you might be afraid to say, well, this is why I'm doing this is how I'm thinking, and being supportive of that, as well as combining that with the data, made a really big difference. You can only fix something if you diagnose the problem properly.
I think the stat about the ambition really helps, because it's not that after we have children the ambition goes. I don't think that's true. I haven't seen it that much. But I think there are assumptions about those things, and so I really like the simple recommendation, Jackie, because I think it's about don't assume, just ask, and if people are comfortable, they'll express, right?
Those clear conversations.
Yeah.
In fact, I think after I had my kids, I was even more ambitious.
Bring it on. You've got that to look forward to. I also think it's about asking, and also I would go further into integrating and actually building on that knowledge. Because I think, yes, we don't ask, we make assumptions. Even in, you're talking about corporate world, I work in the not-for-profit world. With all humility, we make just as many assumptions, even if we're all women. We don't always ask the questions. We have a lot to do also. There's a lot of questions around diversity, which we also have to address. And the same thing, like we may all be women, but not all women get promoted at the same rates, even in the not-for-profit world, which is 80% women staffed across Canada in all not-for-profit world. So it's a very interesting microcosm of what happens even after you've got women in the workforce. Then what happens? Then where do we go? So sharing power and co-creating are some of the ways that I think in our world we see a difference. Again, we have to be very intentional. We have to be very careful. We have to build in time to unpack our unconscious biases, which, again, all of us have. And I think it's the time that it takes that sometimes really puts people off. It's sort of like, if people can say, I can just add this on, I just need to hire more people, get them going, and then it'll all sort itself out. But it's not. It's intentional, constant, day-to-day attention that is going to make that difference. And I think that feels exhausting when you're a racialized person doing it because you know you have to do it. You open the doors for the people who look like you as much as you can once you're in that situation. But it's even more exhausting from somebody looking at this corridor, like this long line ahead of them. How am I going to make sure that that path is laid out for me? Because I don't always see people doing that for me. And again, that's invisible labor that we don't always recognize. And as leaders, if we can take that burden off people and be intentional and careful about how we do it, I think that is also an important role. And our system, seeing the policies and the procedures that create the systems that make it like that, because it's not just about individual working harder. I'm going down that same road, Nishat. If I just do more, I can change this. But it's also about making sure the systems are disentangled from colonialism, from racism, from ableism, from sexism. Yeah, and you name them. You can only do it if you name them again and again.
These are all great strategies. Particularly, I think, is important to take away from this is that you need to track it, right? To know where this is happening and where people are going. I think it's a really great tip there. Jackie, I want to go back to you for a second as well, because you talked about the pivotal role of sponsorship. And I think a lot of times when we're on these conversations, we hear a lot about mentorship. But what is the importance of sponsorship? Like, why is this particularly important for women of color?
Yeah. So maybe I'll just spend a minute and just define the difference, right? So mentorship, you're coaching, you're advising, nothing wrong with that. It's good. Sponsorship, you are deeply invested in someone's career. So that implies that you know them. That implies that there is a relationship or you know them well enough to believe in them. And that means a few things. That means that they will fight for that individual. They will speak for that individual in rooms where you can't be in yourself. And very importantly, because they are putting their privilege and their reputation on the line, and there's an actual real relationship, sponsors, I find, will tell you the truth very bluntly in a way that maybe others will not. So, I mean, I'm a prime example of someone who was really sponsored. I've had a lot of sponsorship poured into me. And for me, what those sponsors, one of the things that I got from my sponsors was they let me know the rules of the road in a way that I didn't understand. So, early on in my career, I had always white male sponsors. Actually, no, I had one sponsor who was a man of color who would come to me and say, we see this role and why aren't you applying for it? You should do this. And then I'd have the little voice that went, no, like, how could you do that? And some of what they did, in addition to fighting for me to have access to that role, was to say to me, here's actually what the qualification is. Here's what you need to do. You're assuming that you need to be here. And if you're here, it's really, really great. So, I think it's absolutely critical for women people of color, those who have been kind of locked out of the system to move forward. And in addition to kind of clearing the pathway, I think that those sponsors get a lot back. So I still have sponsors to this day as I try to figure out what this next phase of my life looks like and what I want to do with it. And when I talk to my sponsors, they don't ask me about, oppression or all the difficulty I have. They sort of know from the way I talk to them what in my mind the barrier might be. And I think it makes them better as leaders, as board chairs, whatever it is, to understand how they can be better talent spotters and how they can work to create, more bandwidth in the system to get, a truly diversified workforce.
I 100% agree. Sponsorship is a differentiator, and a very big differentiator. Jackie, can you speak a little bit about how you nurture sponsorship, or like how you were, because I think it's really lucky for you, or earned for you to have so many sponsors, but can you speak a little bit about how you nurture that?
Yeah, so I have to say I had no plan at all. This was not at all intentional. So the most basic thing is do a great job, right? The most obvious sponsor for you is your immediate people manager. I have to say, if you're working in an environment where you feel like your people manager is not going to sponsor you, does not support you, it is really hard to overcome that. It is really hard to overcome that. So I'm not encouraging everybody to go out and quit, but really hard to overcome that. I'm going to say that to you right now. I now that I'm in a position to sponsor, I will say that I intentionally have tended to sponsor people that I see passing it on, right? So if I see that you're a great people manager, you're being intentional about helping pull others, I'm more likely to want to invest in you because I think you deserve it, and B, I can multiply my impact, right? And then, there's just basic elements of relationship building. So if you've got a relationship and someone is opening doors for you, let them know how that works out, right? Every once in a while, let them know what it means for you. Don't be afraid to go back and have follow-up conversations. So there's an element of just good relationship building that I think is important. The final thing I'd say is, think of sponsorship outside of your immediate world. So as I got more and more senior, finding sponsors that maybe were people who sat on boards that I sat on, or volunteered with me, or had, I got to know through the outside space of my business life. That was helpful. Yeah.
Can I ask because for me, I know about mentorship a lot in my career as well, but sponsorship is something that I don't see that much of. So where do you find a sponsor?
Yeah, so it's sort of what I just said. It can be very obviously somebody that you work with. It can be someone that you meet in volunteering, but there has to be a relationship. There has to be a relationship. And the final thing I'll say is it doesn't always have to be someone who is more senior than you. So, I left Mercer for a couple of years and went to work for a large global asset manager. And, about 12 years ago, my former admin assistant at Mercer called me and said, there's this amazing, she's the kind of person who just knows everything. She said, there's this really amazing job coming up to head our investment division, and you would be perfect for it, and you should come back. And she had a good relationship with our CEO at the time. She went to him and said, I think if you call her, she'll come back. So I came back, and 2 jobs later, I was CEO. So, be nice to everybody. Also, I would say, is a really important element of all of this.
I think I've been also very fortunate with sponsorship, I have to say. Both women and men have been my sponsors of different races. But I do agree, it's relationship, but also it's the symbiotic nature of the relationship. And I think that's
a really
key,
good point.
because I think when you nurture that, then you're able to appreciate and grow that. And then you have to perform. It has to be purpose-driven, and it has to be with the alignment of values. Because once you have that, I think that really helps us to nurture. Because it's a win-win for both sides about how you're able to further the relationship of sponsorship. You may be sponsored or you may be the sponsor the next time.
I don't know if this is sponsorship or mentorship exactly, but one thing that I've come across is often, well, I shouldn't say often, once in a while, really keen younger people in the company will reach out to me to say, I like what you're doing, and I'd like to know how to do that someday. How did you do that? Or how did you get there? Or something like that. And I'll talk to them about it and so on. But what that has done is now I'm looking at them. Like I'm saying, oh, you know, you're keen, you're ambitious, you've got a turn of mind that's interesting, and so on. And so they've made themselves known to me. And I find now, like when, you know, I'm being asked an opinion of who do you think would be good here or there or whatever, they're in my mind. So I think that is also a way that you can create your own sponsors if you do it properly, because they initiated it, but we do have a relationship now, and I am interested in their career, and I do follow up and ask them how things are going and vice versa. So that's
great.
Yeah.
It's a great spot to end. I think we're going to leave a few more minutes for questions since we have about 9 minutes left. So let's take some audience questions. Let's start with the virtual audience. Yeah, do we have any virtual? Oh,
So we have a virtual audience question surrounding what are the panel's thoughts on the role of increased salary transparency, how it can help close, or if it can help close the pay equity gap?
great question.
Great question. I don't mind just chiming in with a few early, very give you time to think, just because one of the things that we've experienced a lot, again, in the non-for-profit world is whether job postings actually have the salary posted or not. And that's been a very big first step that we've asked again and again to see at any level, to see what the salary is that's being posted. And that's a first step in pay transparency, because people within your organization, of course, then see, oh, this is the pay range. I think pay ranges and pay bands are maybe a next step. It sounds very basic maybe for people in the corporate world. In the not-for-profit world, it's like, this is new stuff for us, for some of the smaller organizations especially. So pay ranges are really important. And then I'd say the next thing, and we're coming to this, is trying to attach raises to either increased responsibility or things that aren't always an increase in your pay, in your title. So trying to say you're doing more, so we're going to recognize it with more pay, I think is a way of making sure that you're aligning performance to pay, rather than just, I feel like you might be ready for a pay raise, or I really like you, and so I'm going to go and fight for a pay raise for you because you look like me, or because you act like me, or because I feel comfortable when I'm in the room with you, and trying to make sure that those, maybe again, those biases that maybe aren't always unconscious, but are very much tied to networks that have been established traditionally. I think those are some of the ways that we can go towards bridging a pay gap. I also think legislation would make a huge difference, and therefore the transparency would also make a difference.
I think transparency is a really important step because how do you know what the universe looks like when you can't even understand what that universe is? It's very difficult to be able to advocate for yourself when you're not armed with data points or an ability to actually have a perspective, because it's so opaque. So transparency to me is absolutely important, but you also have to learn how to have some of those hard conversations with people who are your leaders, right? So it's your advocacy. You have to learn how to advocate for yourself. And advocacy is an interesting thing, because I think sometimes people look for results in an immediate fashion. And in my experience, it doesn't happen right away. Advocacy is like you would take opportunities where there's increased responsibility or an increase in your role or your title, and you choose your opportunities to have the conversation in a productive way. and allow for there to be space for them to maneuver, because you have to remember you're operating within a system and your leader is not able to act in isolation. So you have to give them, you have to express yourself, advocate, but then you also have to allow for them to kind of work the system and give them time to come back, because you can't just get results just in isolation. And so I think it's both sides. It's the transparency, but then also learning how and when to advocate is my recommendation. And that's kind of like what has worked on my side.
Do we have time for an audience question as well?
Hi, my name is Jessie. I work at Capital One. I've found in my career that women, this is going to be a broad statement, so bear with me, but women tend to care more about their personal values aligning with a company's values than men. And so what I mean by that is, in the wake of a conflict or a disagreement, I've found that women take it a bit more personally to say, like, oh, I'm not seeing my values reflected in this situation. And so I'm curious if any of you have had that experience of needing to reconcile your personal values with that of the company you're working for, and how you went about doing that.
I think it's a great question, because as you were asking that question, I said, are you talking about me? I'm sure it is about many of us that we felt the same. For me, it was really important. Even when I came to Canada 20 years ago, knowing no one in a real estate industry that is relationship-based, strong relationship-based, but also came with, I think, like many of us, with strong personal values. And that's why I chose Canada. And so I think it was fundamentally, even though I was making no money, I was like, fundamentally, I felt that if I had that sense of integrity, that I will not compromise on the personal values, I will find a company that I can work for that would align with a lot of that values. It's not perfect, and sometimes you do work for companies where there is a misalignment, and it's a struggle. It is painful because you work hard, but it is even more of a challenge when you have to work for people as well as companies whose values don't align with yours, and then you really do feel that you're a hypocrite in terms of your working through. So there have been hard choices that I have to make where you had to leave, but where I am today, it is, I've been so fortunate, and definitely a Kool-Aid, not because my company sponsored this event at all, it didn't, I promise you, but I do feel that for me, like what I work on today, and Kim, my colleagues here too, is like we focus on affordable housing. When I first came, I did stay in a shelter, so I know what it is to not have a roof over your head. So affordable housing is a key component. For me, climate resilience, recognizing that I have 2 teenagers, about the world that I'm going to leave forward, is climate resilience is what we focus on in our company, and inclusion, being a racialized woman as a refugee coming here, to not to be able to think about what is that economic reconciliation for Indigenous communities in the real estate environment that I work in. So I do feel that it may take time, it is challenging, you will have to work harder, but the fact that once you work for a company where your personal and the company values align, you will thrive, and there's no stopping you.
I think also it's important, though, to recognize, do you have an opportunity to be an advocate for change? And your influence and powers of persuasion within can also be very, very important. So the company may not be cast in your image today, but maybe you can make it so. And that's a hard balance to understand when it's just not going to work for you. But I've often felt that it was worth at least giving it a try.
We have time for one more audience question before we wrap up. I have one over here, yeah?
Kim.
Thank you very much. I learned a lot from all of you today, but I do have a question in terms of, it felt like a couple of years ago, corporate Canada was really serious about diversity and made a lot of pledges and commitments. And it feels like there's a bit of a pushback or backlash. I don't know if it's a result of politics or what it is, but how do you guys see that, and how do we kind of overcome that? Anybody?
I think there was a real inflection point a few years ago where for a confluence of things. There was COVID, there was George Floyd, there was Me Too, there was a lot going on in the world. And I think everybody was very energized to, oh my gosh, things are broken, we must fix. And that passion, I think, is no longer there, but you can't live on adrenaline either. So I think that a lot of, at least for my company, a lot of really foundational things were put in place in that period. I like that that we're held to account. Like, are we doing enough? Are we just being performative now? I think that's important. And change happens fast and slow. The pendulum swings forward and back, but never back to where it was. I feel that we're always on a path up to a better thing.
I think it's a good question. The only thing that I wanted to point out is I think it has to be based on data. And I think, Jackie, you brought it up. It's like, what's the data and how we put forth? Because having diversity, it leads to performance. It leads to what the company's priorities are going to be achieving. So I think important to continue to engage and have that conversation. I think it's important.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Well, I think that's all the time we have, so we'll leave it there. Thank you all so much for being a part of this panel. So Jackie, Nishat, Anuradha, Tracy, and Saring, on behalf of the Globe and Mail and our audience, I'd like to thank you for sharing your insights today. It's been wonderful. And for those of you here in person, we're about to head to lunch, which is in the room next door. So we'll go there. And for those in the virtual audience, thank you for your questions and tuning in today.